April 1805. Napoleon is master of Europe. Only the British fleet stands before him. Oceans are now battlefields. Welcome to Your Pick, a film podcast. I'm Geneva.
And I'm Tatum.
We are two friends who love movies and love sharing them with each other. Each week, we take turns picking a film that is close to our hearts and talk about why it moves us, to tears, to laughter, and everything in between. We celebrate the craft of filmmaking, as well as the unique and personal ways we find meaning in the movies we watch. Tatum, back again?
Yes.
Only a few days after we recorded our last episode, so
yeah,
I don't have a whole lot that I've seen in between, but let's start with you. Is there anything you've been watching recently?
Well, I know I haven't been watching any movies. I'm trying to think. Oh, so there's actually one TV show that I've been keeping up with. So it's the new season right now. What season is it? Maybe 4 or 5? But What We Do in the Shadows is back. And I don't remember if I've talked about this show on the podcast before, but it is one of my favorite comedies of all time. It is an excellent, excellent TV show. And this season really, really is great. I thought the last season was not necessarily my favorite. There was a whole storyline with Colin Robinson that I was not particularly a fan of that went on for like the whole season.
Is he? He's the energy vampire, right?
He is the energy vampire, and he's my favorite character. So the fact that they did something with him last season that I wasn't particularly interested in was a little bit of a bummer. But this season is great. It's very, very funny. We have lots of things going on with Guillermo, and he has this great relationship with Laszlo going on. Laszlo is also, I forget the name of the actor who plays his character, but he needs to be nominated for Emmys for his performance because he is so good as Laszlo in this show. The ways that he pronounces words are like just so ridiculous. It reminds me of what's her name, Catherine O'Hara in Schitt's Creek. How people always like just laugh at her intonations and how she says things, and I feel like this guy's performance is very much so the same.
Is that Laszlo? That's the Matt Berry character, I think, right? He's a British comedian. He's got this big bushy black beard.
Well, no, I mean they both have big beards. I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not sure what his name is. But yeah, it's very good. It's very funny. I would highly recommend people watch What We Do in the Shadows. It's an incredibly hilarious satire of vampires that are thousands of years old living in Staten Island. And yeah, craziness ensues. And they have a little butler who's called a familiar. His name is Guillermo. It's great. So highly recommend What We Do in the Shadows. It is an FX on Hulu show. So if you've got Hulu, you've got access to it. So check it out. That's it. That's all I've been watching.
Yeah, well, speaking of shows that are returning and are on Hulu, Only Murders in the Building Season 3 just started. As of the time of this recording, we're a few episodes in. This season, they've brought in Paul Rudd and Meryl Streep.
Do they not release all the episodes at once? Is it weekly that they release episodes?
It's weekly.
Okay.
Yeah, they've released the first 2, I believe, the first week, and then they've been doing one a week ever since. But yeah, so they brought on Paul Rudd and Meryl Streep as guest stars, along with several other recognizable faces this season. And I've got to say, so far, again, we're only a few episodes in, but this season's really returned to form for the show. I adore this show. I thought season 2 was good, but not quite as strong as season 1, but I'm really engaged in season 3. I was a little apprehensive when they announced they were bringing in Meryl Streep because obviously she's a fantastic actor, but I feel like when she comes in these sort of comedy guest roles, she can kind of do the same thing over and over, at least to me. But that is not what she is doing here. She is putting in a performance. She is an actual character, and
what is her character?
Her character is basically so this season is all about Broadway. They're putting on a Broadway show. Paul Rudd is their like movie star lead actor who is supposed to bring in the audiences, but then he gets murdered on opening night. And Meryl Streep is a career actress who she's never had a big break. She's just kind of been toiling away. And then Martin Short, who's the director of the show, discovers her and is like, oh my gosh, you're an amazing actress.
That's
which of course she is, because she's Meryl Streep.
Is playing that role. That's really funny.
I know. And she's kind of, she's very intelligent about her craft, but she's also a little bit unsure of herself. She's a little bit fluttery, but also very sensible. And yeah, I really love her character so far. She has unexpectedly amazing chemistry with Martin Short, which I don't
think that's unexpected. They're both incredible.
They're both incredible actors. I just didn't expect them to have incredible romantic chemistry.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So
I always assumed Martin Short's character was gay, but I also watched like 2 episodes of the first season and that was it. So
yeah, he's not, but it's an understandable thing to think. But yeah, so I'm very excited to see what they're going to do with this season, to see what they're going to do with this character. I'm very curious to see. I feel like right now the solution to who the murderer is very obvious to me, but who knows? Maybe they will surprise me. So we'll see. But yeah, Only Murders in the Building, season 3, highly recommend as of now. The only other major thing the new thing that I've watched this week is a 1980 movie, Agatha Christie adaptation, because I'm still on my Agatha Christie kick, called The Mirror Cracked, which it's an adaptation of a Miss Marple story. Honestly, kind of boring, not great. But the main thing that was excited about watching it is the cast is insane, because it's Angela Lansbury playing Miss Marple. And then
is this the movie you sent me a snap about?
I sent me like,
it has this guy and this person.
Pretty sure I sent you like 5 snaps about it because, So Angela Lansbury plays Miss Marple, and then the lead cast of characters is played by, Elizabeth freaking Taylor, Rock Hudson, Tony Curtis, Kim Novak. You've got Geraldine Chaplin in a supporting role. So it's just like an insane collection of glamorous classic Hollywood stars who are
none of whom I know who they are.
Oh, come on,
I knew Elizabeth Taylor, but you literally kept sending me these snaps and I was like, I love this for you. I have no idea who any of these people are.
Angela Lansbury, do you know Murder, She Wrote, the TV series?
I know of it. I've never seen it.
Okay, yeah, she was the lead in Murder, She Wrote, so I guess this is kind of a proto Jessica Fletcher character. Tony Curtis was in Some Like It Hot. We just watched a few months ago.
Oh, okay.
He's the non-Jack Lemmon one, the one who dresses up as the sea captain and romances Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and then Kim Novak is the lead in Vertigo.
Oh, okay.
I love how your response is, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, at least I do know some of them, I guess.
Yeah. This is me just being nerdy about, my favorite classic Hollywood character actors and lead actors. And someday we should do Giant. I really surprisingly loved Giant. That is the 3rd movie that James Dean was in. That is kind of,
who's James Dean?
I'm kidding. Tatum's just trying to get my goat now.
I think I watched James Dean movies before you did. Maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, I'm kind of doubtful, but
okay. I believe you.
No, I'm pretty sure I saw Rebel Without a Cause for the first time when I was probably like, I don't know, 15 or 16. So
oh yeah.
I mean, you might have independently also watched it before.
No, you saw it
did.
Before me for sure. Okay. Let's fight about it. Let's be competitive. I don't. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
No, sorry. This is just me just geeking out and being incredibly nerdy about old Hollywood stars that no one cares about. But anyway, yeah, the movie itself kind of boring, but it was great to see them just being all campy and over the top and having a grand old time. So yeah, love that for them.
I saw this video on Instagram the other day that was like, let's not forget that one of the best movie casts of all time was Spy Kids 3. And it's this clip of the end of the movie where everyone is saying like, to family, to family, to family. Like they're all putting their hands into a circle saying it. And like each member of the cast has their shot where they say to family. And I just love that the video was like, yeah, just a reminder, the cast of Spy Kids 3 is out of this world.
Wait. I'm not even remembering who's in, because obviously you got Antonio Banderas and Carlo Gugino as the parents, and then Ricardo Montalban as the grandfather. But who else is?
Oh man,
did they bring on for the third one?
It brings back people from the first one and the second one. So it's got like Steve Buscemi. It's got
the cast for the Spy Kids franchise in general is just insane.
They're good movies. Kids these days need to watch them. They are good. I mean, Spy Kids 3 is not good, but
right. Spy Kids 2 is kind of a low-key masterpiece from my memory.
Spy Kids 1 and 2 are fantastic. Like, let's bring
Tony
those back.
Shalhoub, Steve Buscemi, Alan Cumming. I'm forgetting who else, but there's like a bunch of other.
All of them say to family in the end of Spy Kids 3.
Why are they like half of those people were villains in the first two? Why are they suddenly
They all
family?
turn good. They all turn good. Even Sylvester Stallone, who plays the villain in the third one,
Sylvester
becomes
Stallone
good and says to family at the end.
Oh my gosh!
George Lopez. No, I'm sorry. That's Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
I mean, you could tell me that George Lopez was in those movies, and I would believe you.
I mean, they're both made by the same people. They're basically the same movie.
Yeah, I feel like someone Wild plays the president in those movies too, but I can't remember who it is now.
Is there a president? I don't remember. I need to rewatch those movies. I loved them when I was little.
Honestly, throw them on the pod.
Let's do it.
Put them on the roster.
Let's do it. Honestly, I would love to do Spy Kids.
I would love to rewatch Spy Kids. Yeah.
This is like the episode of tangents. I feel like we should cut all of this out.
I know. We're about to talk about such a long movie too.
Yeah.
But sorry, what's the name of Carmen and Junie are the kids' names. That's right. Yeah. Yes. Carmen was just like, she was just the epitome of like cool, to me. She was like just the epitome of style. Like I wanted to be her so bad.
Yeah. I had a crush on her. I now realize.
Yeah, understandable.
And Junie is now married to Meghan Trainor, which is crazy.
Yes, which is nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What a world.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of worlds, let's go to the far side of the world.
Let's go to the far side. All right. We need to wrap this up. So, okay. Getting back to the matter at hand today.
Oh, wait. Are we recording a podcast?
Oh, dang it. That was today? All right. Today on the show, we are discussing Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, 2003 action-adventure film directed by Peter Weir and starring Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany. The film is set in 1805, a time when Britain was at war with France. The story follows the HMS Surprise, a British warship whose captain, Jack Aubrey, played by Russell Crowe, is ordered to catch or sink a French ship, the Acheron. The Acheron, which is newer and more technologically advanced than the Surprise, proves to be a much more dangerous foe than originally expected. A months-long chase ensues all the way down the coast of South America and into the Pacific Ocean. As Aubrey faces the normal challenges of running a ship and keeping order among his men, he is both supported and challenged by his friend, the ship's doctor and an enthusiastic naturalist, Stephen Maturin, or Maturin? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his last name. Anyway, he's played by Paul Bettany. The intellectual sparring between the two characters as they try to do their respective jobs gives much of the film its charm. At the same time, they are both drawn into the position of mentors, trying to leave a legacy for those who come after them. Aubrey in training the young officers under his command, and Maturin in trying to make contributions to natural science while encouraging a young midshipman's interest in biology. The screenplay for Master and Commander, which was co-written by Weir and John Coley, is an adaptation of a long-running series of novels by Patrick O'Brian. These novels detail the exploits of Aubrey and Maturin during and after the Napoleonic Wars, and they are known for their lovingly detailed evocation of life in the British Navy in the early 1800s. Weir took similar care in recreating the world of the HMS Surprise. The cast was trained in the minutiae of life aboard a warship, and the film gets much of its texture from the documentary-style inclusion of little details about daily chores and activities. With the support of Tom Rothman, an executive at Fox who had been trying to get the Patrick O'Brian novels adapted for years, Weir was given a massive $150 million budget. This allowed him to acquire reproduction ships and scale models that he shot in both huge tank sound stages and at sea, possibly the last time a production of this scale could do this many recreations without the major use of CGI. The production was also able to film for a few days on location in the Galapagos Islands. One article I read says that they were actually the first non-documentary crew to film there. The film itself at the time was not really a hit, but it's kind of grown in popularity, and it's sort of become a beloved object in the years since. I certainly love it.
Wasn't it a financial flop?
I don't think it lost money, but it didn't make much more than its budget.
Okay.
Yeah. It definitely was. They were hoping that it would be a huge hit and would kind of jumpstart a franchise, and it did not, which is very unfortunate because I would have loved to see more movies with this cast. But
they definitely ended it with like this is open. There could be another one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, again, it's based on a novel series, so the precedent is there for it to be, here's one exciting incident in the lives of these people who have very eventful lives. But yeah, that did not happen. But yeah, I remember, I did not see this movie in theaters, but I remember my first hearing about it from my mom, who went to see it with my dad on kind of a date night. And my dad is a huge, British Navy, tall ships. Like he just, it's a very, very stereotypical kind of dad interest, but he's read all about them. He'd read all the Patrick O'Brian novels. He loved all of that.
Oh, wow. He's read all the books. Crazy.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I just remember my mom seeing it and coming back and saying, I actually really love this movie. And she was very surprised because she does not, any war movie, action movie, any movie where there's no women, no kissing, like she's going to tune it out, generally speaking.
There are women in this movie that sell them things from a little boat.
But yeah, she loved this movie. She was completely engrossed. And so that spoke to me about this is a movie that can transcend even, like the audience that you would think would be for it. Like this is a movie that can speak to a lot of different types of audiences. So I don't remember exactly when I first saw this movie. I was probably in high school or so. We'd maybe rented it and put it on, and yeah, I loved it. I was entranced. I'm so in on it. The characters are so vivid. The things that they go through are so interesting. You feel so much for them at different points in their journey. And I rewatched it last year and loved it again and thought, this is a movie I should be rewatching a lot more than I currently am. And also, this is a movie I really want to talk about. So, yeah, Tatum, what's your history with this movie? And also, what did you think on this watch or rewatch?
Yeah, so this is a movie that I have not looked into rewatching for a while, because when I first discovered this movie, I watched it all the time. Like, all the time. So much so that I was like, do I even need to rewatch this movie before our podcast discussion? So this movie was very, it was a big part of my movie watching experience when I was younger. I will say the reason I started the reason I watched this movie the first time was because Billy Boyd is in it, who plays Pippin in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I was obsessed with Lord of the Rings / still am / always will be. But I was like, I love Billy Boyd. I want to watch what he's in, and he's in this movie. And I also was really a fan of Russell Crowe at the time because of Gladiator.
Is Gladiator a movie that we ever might do on the pod?
Maybe. I mean, yeah.
That's one I haven't rewatched in a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I feel like I'd have to rewatch it in order to find out if I have enough to say about it to actually do a podcast episode on it. Because that's another movie I've seen so many times. That was on TV like every weekend for 10 years. I feel like it was always on TV. Great movie though. I know some people don't like it. I think it's a good movie. I would like to talk about this a little bit at some point. We don't have to do it right now, but just the crazy run of successful roles that Russell Crowe had at this time that then just kind of fizzled out. But man, he had like a 6-year stint where everything he was making was like Oscar, or Oscar worthy. But anyway, so yeah, I really like this movie. I really liked it growing up. I think it's incredibly well made. The way that it makes me feel like I know how to operate this type of ship is crazy, because I definitely don't. But I watched this movie and it feels like, I think you mentioned it, it almost feels like a documentary kind of explaining to us and showing us what this world is like. It feels very real. This world doesn't feel like I'm watching a story of something that doesn't exist. It feels, it feels real. We can go into this a little bit later if you want. I'm just going to say it because I'm interested to see your reaction, honestly. But this movie is a sports movie. And I know you say you don't like sports movies, but this is a sport movie.
Interesting. I'm open to hearing the argument.
It's got all the beats. It's got all the same, it has a couple added things that are not specifically the sports movie genre, but like it's a sports movie. So yeah, we can talk about that if you want, but I'm very much so wanting to make that argument and to hear your reaction. But yeah, this is a great movie. I for some reason, I felt like watching it again, I thought it was going to feel really long because I was like, okay, I've seen this before. I know it's a long movie, but I watched it. I was like, that flew by. That movie did not feel long to me at all. And it's over 2 hours and it's really just people on a boat the whole time. So the fact that a movie of that little, just like not many locations and they're on a boat, and the fact that it's that long and I didn't feel like it was long, I just think that's a big accomplishment. So yeah, I think, like I said last week, if you hadn't chosen this movie to talk about, I would have at some point. I think we both love it, but you beat me to the punch, and I'm glad I'm here to talk about it. I think it's gonna be good.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up the pacing, because I had a similar thought when I'd rewatched it this last year. Is this movie is so well paced and it really, really moves. And I think that's a testament to the script. I think they do such a good job of setting up a whole lot of different characters and plot lines at the very beginning. And then the rest of the structure of this movie is largely very episodic. They kind of go to one place and something happens with a couple of characters, and then they resolve it, and then they move on to the next challenge, and something happens with a few characters and they resolve it. But all the way through, it's weaving in these running plot lines about the relationship between Aubrey and Maturin. And actually, I'm going to start calling them Jack and Stephen because I don't know how to pronounce the last names. The relationship that the two of them have, the chase with the Acheron and what's going on with that ship, and people like Blakeney and Pullings who are kind of in the background but will step in occasionally and have things to do. And then it all comes together in this really, really impressively staged battle that is very exciting, very clear in the sense that you always understand what's happening, but it's also very chaotic, and you really do feel like you're in the midst of it, and there's splinters of wood flying everywhere, and you're trying to figure out who's the enemy and who's your friend and who to stab and who not to stab.
Who's the doctor, who's not a doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, just watching this movie too, I mentioned before about all the practical sets that they use. It really did make me nostalgic for this type of filmmaking that happens on this scale, which is just so rare nowadays. You have a few people, your Christopher Nolans and whatnot, who are really committed to that kind of practical storytelling. But I was mentally comparing it as I was watching it to a movie called In the Heart of the Sea.
Ron Howard
from 2015. Film. Ron Howard film, yeah, which I attempted to watch a year or two ago. I don't think I made it the whole way through. And that movie, it's not a terrible movie or anything like that. There are good things about it, but one thing that really turned me off is how obvious the CGI is of the ocean, of the whale. Obviously you need to CGI something like a whale, but
we're gonna find a real whale and train it.
Get a practical whale, we're gonna train it. But even just a moment where they're all kind of stranded in a lifeboat in the middle of the sea, and it is so incredibly obvious that it's a CGI sea, and everything has been kind of color corrected to death. This movie, it's shot on film. It looks gorgeous, but the color, if there's any color correction going on, it's not obvious. Everything looks very, very natural. And it's just really good lighting and staging and camera work. And you really just feel all of the love and the care that was put into this movie. And I think that really pays off in how real and textured and lived in this world feels like.
Yeah, I think I'm desperately, that's a very extreme word. I'm definitely nostalgic for that type of filmmaking as well. Those are the types of movies I grew up with. Lord of the Rings is incredibly practical. Obviously there is CGI, but and more so as the series goes on, but I mean, so many of those sets are like miniatures and full scale sets and all of these things. And it's like nowadays people just stand in front of a green screen, you know, and I appreciate just having that dynamic of just practical things and knowing that it's real, which I think is why, you know, a lot of people really like Tom Cruise movies, because we know that what we're seeing is, even though him putting his life at risk, but like we know that it's practical what we're seeing. And I just think that's really cool. And I think we see some of that with some of Denis Villeneuve's films. And I think James Cameron sometimes, maybe not as much anymore. But again, going back to that nostalgic, like when James Cameron made this Titanic and they had this big pool and like all of these things, you really can tell it is a difference. And I think, I don't know, it's just a lot easier to be invested and engaged when things, when you know that they're real. So, yeah.
There's this gorgeous shot, I think kind of early on in the movie, where you see Jack and Lieutenant Pullings, who's his second in command, and they're at the top of this mast, and they're just kind of hanging out and enjoying the breeze. And then the camera pulls out, and you see they are really on the top of the tallest mast in this massive ship that is really sailing through the ocean. And it's actually the two actors up on there. And just the sense of excitement and thrills that creates. And then they're kind of racing each other down the rigging, and they're, you know, it's very playful, and you just get a sense of, you know, what a joy it is to be at certain times on this ship, and to be like, as an actor, you know, being able to do these things physically for real, and how that can translate. Like I read a like a 15th anniversary retrospective article on the making of this movie, and James Darcy, who plays Pullings, was talking about that, filming that moment, and how they had these harnesses they were supposed to wear, and Russell Crowe was like, I'm not wearing my harness. And so he climbed up without the harness and then put it back on top, and then he was like, actually, I think this show's too much. And he had James Darcy help him take it off. And James Darcy's like, if he dies, am I going to be blamed for this? But that energy, like I fully support safety measures and actors wearing harnesses, but the energy that comes from having two actors physically on top of the mast in this movie is just something that it's very difficult to replicate.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think that would happen nowadays. But someone would be sued and fired and whatever. And I think that's a good thing that people don't really do that anymore. But yeah, I see what you're saying about that kind of creating a different sort of energy.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was thinking, because as I said, this is a very episodic movie, and I think I want to go through the plot kind of bit by bit, but we can kind of talk about it, and maybe each segment will lead us into larger conversations. All right, so to start with, in this movie, we actually start really, which I think is such a smart choice, we start almost immediately with an action scene. So we get the opening scroll where we establish the fact that this is the Napoleonic Wars, England versus France. The surprise, Captain Aubrey have been given these orders to track down the Acheron and basically take her or sink her. And we start with this bell being chimed as the night watch is changing guard, and there's this officer named Hallam who is looking out into the fog. It's night, it's very foggy, and he thinks he sees a sail, but he's not quite sure. And so they beat to quarters, which is basically get everyone ready for their battle stations. And Jack comes and he checks, and he's like, at first he doesn't see anything, but he tells Hallam, you did the right thing by summoning me and getting everyone on their guard. But then he checks again, and the ship comes in, the Acheron is here, they've surprised them, and all of a sudden it's just chaos, and there's cannon fire, and everyone's fighting, and people are getting wounded and ripped open, and Aubrey's issuing orders, and basically the surprise just completely gets her ass kicked. You know, people are, they finally managed to flee into the fog and get away, but there are a lot of deaths, there's a lot of wounded people down below. Stephen is having to patch up as many people as he can. During this sequence, so we meet Jack, we meet the captain, we meet Stephen, who's the ship's doctor. We also meet two characters who will be important later. So we meet little Blakeney, who is a midshipman. He's like maybe 10 or 12 years old. He's just the cutest little boy. And he's an officer on the ship. He's referred to as Mr. Blakeney, but he's just this child, and this is basically his first voyage. So Jack is like a friend of his father and promised to take care of him. And then we meet Hallam, who is an older officer, but is the same rank as Blakeney. He's also a midshipman, and he's very unsure of himself and of whether he's doing the right thing at any given moment. So, afterwards they're kind of patching up the ship, and the officers talk about the fact that the Acheron is it's a newer ship, and it has longer range guns, and the way it's built, it's going to be faster than the Surprise. The Surprise is a bit older, but Aubrey is very offended when they call it aged. He's like, no, she's not aged. She's in her prime. No, he kind of grew up on the Surprise, we find out, and he's very attached to it. But yeah, so Tatum, any thoughts on the way this movie opens and the way that all of the elements of the ship's kind of mini world are set up?
I mean, wow, so much happens. I mean, I think kind of like I said before, I mean, I really like how this movie does a good job of helping me understand what life on a ship like this is like. Again, I watch a scene like this and I'm like, oh, I feel like I understand how a ship crew works, and I could just walk on there and know what's going on, which, like, again, I couldn't. But I feel like after watching this opening sequence, it's like we kind of see what they look like when they're just kind of just on the ship. And then once the Phantom shows up and they're, hard quarters or whatever, then we see what they're like when they're in battle and what their roles are and how this works. And, we see them as the ship's getting hit with water, they're pumping the water out from underneath. And then, like, we see all of these different tactics and different ways that this boat functions. It's not just, oh, let's shoot cannons back at them. There's a lot more going on, because that's how a ship functions. So yeah, I just think it does a really good job of just setting the stakes from the beginning. And the introduction of Captain Jack is super cool. How, we don't see him at first, and all of a sudden he hears, like, hard quarters, and he has this look where the camera kind of, tilts up at him, and then he walks out, and we're following him with
the sort of hero introduction.
Yeah, with his little ponytail, and he's like, tightening his belt and all of that stuff. Yeah, and it really just gives us an idea of establishing rank and how they respect each other and how everyone's got a specific role. Yeah, I think it just does a good job of establishing the stakes and the characters and all of that stuff. I mean, it's a very gripping. I noticed that when you chose this movie, you wrote in our document that it's adventure. And I think it kind of is, but also watching this sequence, I was like, this movie's kind of an action movie. Like if at least for me, not that adventure is an inaccurate word, also not that it matters, but I just was watching, I was like, I don't know, this is kind of just like an action movie, and it's got really great action and practical effects. And I think this first scene kind of shows that and really proves that. So the action is great.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I think there are many genres that this could fall into, but action alongside adventure, I think, is definitely one of them. Yeah, like you say, this opening sequence, it establishes the stakes, and it, in the sense that it really establishes the fact that this is a ship of people who are on their own. They're going to be stopping at different ports to refit, but there's a certain level of self-sufficiency that they need to have. And every battle, every skirmish they're going to have with the Acheron is going to cost them. It's going to cost them time to stop and make repairs and acquire the wood they need and physically pump out the water. It's going to cost them men, who are killed or who are wounded and who are physically losing parts of their bodies. So an important thing that happens early on is that in this battle, Blakeney gets a really bad wound in his arm and it's not healing right. And so they need to amputate it. And for the rest of the movie, little 10-year-old, 12-year-old Blakeney has one arm. And that's just the reality of living in this situation and this being your occupation, is that it is so physically taxing and physically dangerous. And that's the mindset that they're all operating under every minute. And every time they worry about whether the Acheron is going to come out of the fog and surprise them again, these are the costs that they're thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, going back to a little bit of just who and how this establishes, you know, just what's going on here, I think in addition, we also see the dynamic between Jack and Steven almost from the very beginning. We see Steven kind of stepping in as this doctor role, and it's very clear that he is the one who knows how to do this. Like, he is the authority in this area, and yes, Jack might be the captain of the ship, but like Steven has a very big important role as well that other people respect because no one else on the ship can do what he does. And yeah, I just think it's cool to just establish kind of how they're both really important, how they're both very highly respected, but also how they have a cool relationship with each other. And I think this movie does a very good job of making Jack feel like, you know, yes, he's kind of a tough guy because we know that he has to be in order to like have the respect of his men and do his job. But he's also a human being who has a heart and cares for people. And, you know, we see later on that develop more and more. But in this opening sequence or opening, you know, however many minutes it is, we learn about Jack and his connection to Blakeney. And we see how much he cares for him and wants to make sure he pulls through from this injury and all of these things. I just wanted to mention that. I just really like how in the midst of all of this action and setting up kind of the dynamics of the world, we also are learning so much about these characters. And there's a lot of characters in this movie. And I think it's a testament to the quality of this film that I feel like, at least for me, with every single one of these characters, no matter how minor they are, I care about them. And I feel like I understand who they are as people. And like, this cast is huge. It's, you know, obviously some people have larger roles than others, but I don't know. The fact that maybe if I were to count it, it would be like 15 plus people. But the fact that I feel like I know who all of them are, who they care about, why they care about it, what their role is, what their relationship is with other people on the crew. Yeah, it's really a testament to the screenwriting, I guess. But yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up and brought up how early the relationship between Jack and Steven is established. Like you say, they are both extremely important and very knowledgeable and kind of have absolute authority over their respective domains. And that gives them respect among the crew, but it also gives them respect for each other. And the fact that Steven is able to push back on Aubrey as often as he is a testament to the long-standing friendship they have, but it's also, I think, a testament to the fact that he is so indispensable on this ship and he is so critical to their ultimate survival. And so that gives him a leeway, and so they can have this relationship where Steven is often, you know, generally not publicly because that's not good leadership, but privately he is often questioning or pushing back on the decisions that Jack makes. And Jack listens to him and respects him. He doesn't necessarily always agree, but you know, they have this mutual respect and this mutual leeway to push back on each other.
Yeah, I wonder, I don't know if you came across any of this in your research, but I wonder how this casting process went and how much their chemistry on screen has to do with like their personal relationship, because I don't know if you've seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, but A Beautiful Mind came out, I think, 2 years before this movie, and they both kind of act next to each other in that movie and have a very interesting relationship in that film. And so I find it to be, I wonder how the process of them acting together in that film led into them acting together in this film. But you can tell, whether it's on screen or not, like there is a chemistry between these characters that helps you feel like they do actually have history, you know? And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I did not actually find anything, and I didn't do a ton of research, but the one main article that I was looking at for background info did not mention anything about the casting process, so that's a great question.
Have you seen A Beautiful Mind?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So, actually, on a similar note, just to note that we see here Steven performing brain surgery on a wounded sailor and plugging up the hole with an iron coin, which is just very like mind blowing that people have been performing brain surgery for millennia, but it's just you probably don't see that every day, and so everyone gathering around to watch it is just
are them his brains,
cool.
Doctor? No, that's no. Just blah 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 blah.
That's just blood. Here's his
Those
brains.
Are his brains.
And so you get the sense too of why Steven would be so respected among the crew as well, is like he does this extremely delicate surgery.
He's literally performing brain surgery on a moving ship.
And it works. The guy survives.
He holds fast.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And we also see too during this section that the two of them will regularly get together and they'll play music in the evenings, which is just a lovely little detail.
Can I just say, let me pull it up real quick, but there was one review on Letterboxd that I really liked. Which one was it? Hold on, I'm pulling it up. Oh, great movie about two guys who just want to have a jam session.
That's amazing.
I love that.
I saw a meme, like I said, film Twitter's really reclaimed this movie. I saw one recently that was like, do you know there's an article that was going around that's like the cure for male loneliness is this thing and this. It was like a picture from Master and Commander, and it said the cure for male loneliness is setting off to the high seas with a bunch of your bros or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You have no choice. Figure it out.
So the next section of the movie, is now that they're refitted and they're back on their way and they're pursuing the Acheron. So a couple of sailors actually, there's this one sailor who saw the Acheron being built because just by chance he was in, I think they said it was Boston where it was built. So he creates this little mock-up for Jack to have so that he could see kind of how the Acheron is different from the Surprise and why it's able to be faster and even though it is more heavy than the Surprise. And so Aubrey kind of has that on his desk as like a, symbol of his obsession through the rest of the movie.
I love that little line where Jack says something like, oh yeah, modern technology. This is the age we live in now.
What an age we live in. Yeah.
Like, wow, that's so funny.
But it is so cool. Like this is such an interesting era in history, and especially with the through line of Steven being so excited to get to spend time in the Galapagos Islands and look at all these bugs and iguanas and birds and things that no one's ever seen before.
Iguanas don't swim. These ones do. What?
He's just so excited about it. But it is this, it's this late 17 or early 1800s Enlightenment, time where it feels like the world's being recreated and science is being revolutionized and everything is, every possibility is open. Like it's just, it's an interesting, exciting time. There's a great, scene where the officers get together at dinner and they're all very kind of, they're all just merry and they're just having fun. Aubrey does his "To wives and sweethearts, may they never meet" toast, which everyone finds hilarious.
They find his jokes to be way funnier than they actually are. The lesser of two weevils is really not that funny of a joke, but
everyone is absolutely on the floor,
it's really
rolling
not that funny
when he makes that joke. And Steven's look of complete bafflement is so funny.
Yeah, I think
it's very obvious that everyone at that table has had like 3 glasses of wine and they are very tipsy and just everything is funny to them. And Steven's just not quite on the same page.
Yeah, for sure. They've also been out at sea for a very long time.
You gotta find your enjoyments where you can.
Yeah.
They stop at a trading port and they kind of, you get the one glimpse of women that you see in this movie very briefly, from the indigenous women who are at the trading port. But then they're off to sea again. They have another run-in with the Acheron though, because the Acheron yet again is able to kind of sneak up on them and come up on them unexpectedly.
Can I just say my favorite line in the movie? I don't know why it's my favorite line. Maybe it's the way that he says it. I don't know. But when Jack says, "This is the second time you snuck up on me. There will not be a third." I love that line. It's so good.
So badass. Yes.
And the fact that we have all I never thought that looking through whatever you call it, it's not a telescope, but whatever the term is,
I think they're telescopes. Are they not telescopes?
They called telescopes? I don't know.
Maybe there's some more technical term.
Yeah, I'm like, telescopes are just for space, right? I don't actually know. I'm just gonna say scope.
Sure.
I never thought that someone looking through a scope could be so badass, but like whenever he's looking through this scope, the way that they like shoot him from different angles, standing on the front of this ship, and then we have sequences where he's looking through the scope and then he sees the captain of the other ship looking back. Like, I don't know. I just think that he's such a cool guy, and I think like this is the type of person you want to be the captain of your ship, which is why he's the captain of their ship, and that's why he's called Lucky Jack. Like, he just is so good at what he does and so confident in the decisions that he's making, and just like, yeah, he's really cool. Anyway, that line is just really great. I really like that line.
Yeah, it's great. They do such a great job of establishing in this movie how Jack's reputation among his men, he has so much, his men respect him so much, and it's an earned reputation.
Mm-hmm.
He really is that brave and that resourceful, and he gets them out of so many scrapes, and he knows when to engage and when not to engage in order to protect his men. And yeah, the movie it does such a great job of making him heroic, but also making him seem human.
Yeah.
He has all of this love for his men, even though he can get, he's not perfect. He can get blinded sometimes. And this is kind of the section where Stephen calls him out a little bit, where Jack is starting to get a little bit obsessive about wanting to track down the Acheron, because by this point, I think he's basically already exceeded his orders. His orders were just to go to as far as Brazil, and they're already way past that. And
they're like in the freaking Antarctic at some point.
Yeah.
Like, or Arctic, whichever one it is.
Antarctic, yeah. Yeah, he's kind of like, he's trying to psychoanalyze the captain a little bit. He's like, who is this guy? How is he able to sneak up on me so many times? And I love that moment where Stephen responds, he fights like you, Jack. He's just like, this guy has, all the skill and resourcefulness and skill that you see in this guy. You have those same powers, like he has so much confidence in his friend.
Yeah. I mean, just speaking of his, kind of his respect that he has from his men, I think we really see that play out in the sense that the fact that which I don't think with where we're at in terms of what we're talking about, maybe we haven't hit this yet. Maybe it happens after this. But the fact that, they lose a crew member and Jack is the one who has to make the order of cutting the rope. And he's the one, it reminds me of a Game of Thrones when Ned Stark is like, the one who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Like, it's just necessary that the person who has to make that difficult call is the one who actually does the act. And the fact that he's able to do that, and then he says later on, like, the crew won't take it very well. He was very popular. The fact that the crew does not rise up against Jack because of that, I think is a big deal. Obviously they take it out on someone else. And then Jack even takes Hallam under his wing, and, he just sees the value in these people. And, anyway, I'm just kind of rambling, but yeah, I don't know. He's a very good leader. And I mean, obviously I'm stating the obvious, but yeah.
Yeah, no, he is. He's a really good leader, and he takes the trouble to know all of the men by name and to keep track mentally of what is going on with them in general. Not every specific, but in general terms, if there are things that are going to affect the men at large, he listens and he pays attention. So the losing a crew member, that's actually very soon. So first, as they're trying to escape the Acheron, they do this thing where they put out a decoy raft at night, which is awesome.
So great.
And I love the fact he chooses this younger midshipman. He's like maybe a 14, 16, somewhere in there. Calamy, I think his name is.
Mm-hmm.
But he sends him out tied up with a rope, because he's like, I don't want to lose you, to go and basically to put this raft out and light the lamps on it, and then to swim back to the ship so that the Acheron will be distracted and they'll be able to slip away. And it's just a great moment of his kind of leadership and mentorship, the way that he entrusts this really, really important task to this young boy, but it's because he knows that he can do it. And
the boy trusts him enough to go do it too. I mean, it's a dangerous task. They're literally, the Phantom is shooting cannons at this decoy structure, but the kid is like, I'm gonna go do it, you know? And the fact that when he gets back to the ship, Jack is like, now tell me that wasn't fun.
It's such a good line. It's such a good line. It's so appropriate for the circumstances. It's so, like, you know, friendly, and like, it's a way of saying you did a good job, but it is also just it's so appropriate for someone of his age. Yeah, I love it.
Totally. And it shows how, I don't know, it shows Jack's love for being on a ship too. It's like the fact that because he does think it's fun, you know? Like,
well, he was in that position once, and you could totally see young Jack, 20 years earlier doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's just, you can see that he genuinely loves what he does. And that is a dream of mine, to be very good at what I do and also love what I do at the same time. I feel like my adult life, I've either been one or the other. I would like to be both at some point. But kudos to Jack for accomplishing that dream.
Yeah, it's the universal dream. Well, then after that, though, is when his job gets a bit more difficult, as you mentioned, because they're now behind the Akron and they're chasing her, and they go around the Cape of Good Horn. But there's this huge storm that's happening.
How did they come to sneak up on it again? Didn't they go to the Galapagos to like restock? And then
they've not yet reached the Galapagos.
Something happened that helped them sneak up on the Phantom. What was it?
It was the decoy. The decoy
you're right.
allowed them, the Acheron, to pass them, and then they were able to catch up with her.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but anyway, so they're trying to chase the Acheron now and to catch her, but there's this storm that's happening. And
this sequence of the storm,
oh my goodness, I have no idea how they filmed it.
It looks so good. It's
terrifying. Like, you could not catch me on a ship like that. It looks like it's about to go under at any moment.
You can't catch me on a ship ever. This is why I don't go on ships, because I picture things like this and I'm just like, there's no way in hell I'm getting on anything that has a chance of being stuck in a situation like that. People that go on cruises, I'm like, forget it. You're crazy. No, thank you.
Yeah, much, much respect to anyone who, like, this is their profession. But yeah, so Worley is a sailor who's up. He's trying to take in the sails, I think, which is a very important thing to do when you're caught in the middle of a storm, and having your sails out mean your mast could get knocked down. And Hollom is sent up there to help him, but Hollom kind of freezes because he's just, terrified, understandably. But the sail basically is just like ripped off. Worley falls into the water. The sail is in the water and it's tied by ropes to the ship, and it's dragging the ship down. And so Jack has to make this incredibly difficult decision of cutting loose the sail, which Worley is trying to swim to, but once it's cut loose, then Worley won't be able to get back to the ship, and he drowns. And everyone grieves. Like you said, Worley is really popular. He had this friend, Nagel, who is really upset about it. And there's a really nice conversation between Stephen and Jack where Stephen's like, Worley was a casualty of war. This isn't your fault.
I have to tell myself it's the enemy that killed them, not me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the music they use there is, I had to look it up, but it's Fantasia on a Theme by Thomas Tallis by Ralph Vaughan Williams, which is a really beautiful, sad piece of music. So, yeah, again, it's just kind of the human cost and the constant danger of what it is that they're doing and how capricious it can be. And you can kind of just be, doing your job one moment and the next moment you're knocked into the sea, and that's it.
Ugh. Yeah, I mean, that I don't even know how to talk about it, but like that scene is just the way it looks. I mean, you said it, but I don't know how they shot that. Like, how much of that is CGI? How much of it is in a tank? Like, what? Because the water and the waves look so real, especially that incredibly tragic shot where we see, him kind of just like floating away in the water with the sail. It all looks so real, and it's really awful. But But yeah, it just like this movie does such a good job, like we said before, of just establishing the stakes. And one of the reasons the stakes feel so hit so close to home is because everything just feels so real. And yeah, this sequence, it's probably, I mean, this might sound weird, but it's probably my favorite sequence in the whole film. It's really powerful and it looks fantastic. And like the emotions are really heightened. And yeah, it makes me feel sick to my stomach, like seeing a young man, you know, floating out to sea in a storm and, you know, knowing that he's going to drown out there. Like, it's awful. But yeah, I mean, sacrifice one life for the sake of many, I guess, but doesn't make it any easier.
Yeah. Jack definitely makes the right decision, but it's a difficult one to bear on your shoulders. And I was just thinking too, with what you'd said earlier about what a skillful job this movie does in having this really large cast, but also allowing you to feel like you know who each of the characters are and are able to follow them. So Worley and Nagel were both set up earlier because Worley is actually the one who had seen the Acheron being built, and he created the model that Jack has been looking at. And so for the rest of the movie, every time you see that model sitting on Jack's desk, that's also a reminder of Worley and the contribution that he makes.
Which is a huge contribution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, that lives on even after he is gone.
What's that line? Like, thank God for Worley's uncle's second cousin or something
Yeah.
like that.
That's the reason that he was in Boston to see it being built, is just some random relative's wedding or something that he was attending. All right. So after this sad moment is the Galapagos Islands. So they're headed to the Galapagos. This is like, I don't know, like 30 years before Darwin was there, something like that. But clearly it's...
I'm going to say 30 years later. I was like, Geneva, I'm pretty sure it's not 30 years later.
They've been out on this ocean a long time.
But they all look the same age.
It's a miracle. Yeah, so this is, something like 30 years before Darwin is going to be there. But
and they head there to like repair the ship, right? So they can take some time to like get it back into ship shape.
Well, I think the idea is that it makes most sense for the Acheron to head there next. So they're heading there because the thought is we can find the Acheron there.
Okay.
And so Jack promises Stephen, crucially, because Stephen's really excited to get there and to be able to do his little biologist stuff and check out animals and bugs and samples and stuff. And Jack promises him that he's going to have the chance to actually do that. And by this point, I think Stephen is kind of taken Blakeney under his wing as a little budding naturalist and is showing him how you create drawings and make observations of different species. And he's teaching him how like evolutionary changes that bugs have made to adapt to their surroundings to protect themselves from foes, which becomes important later. But yeah, they get to the Acheron, but what they discover there is a lifeboat full of men who were on this whaling boat called the Albatross, which had been attacked by the Acheron, which means that the Acheron is still fairly nearby and they can catch up with it. So Jack basically reneges on his promise to Stephen and says, no, we're going to go after it. The wind is with us. We need to go after it right now. And Stephen is not happy about this. He's kind of sulking on deck, which is very cute.
Well, that's when they're all practicing, like, speeding up their rate of, like, shooting cannons, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
they're, like,
Stephen's
running drills.
just kind of in his little office, like, looking at books, and he's like...
He's really grumpy, yeah.
Yep.
But Blakeney comes up to him and he brings him his little beetle and he's like, I think it swam over from the island. So we got a Galapagos beetle here that we would never have gotten if we'd gone on the island. And it's so sweet, like trying to comfort him for not getting to go to the island.
I love that sequence, by the way, of Jack kind of cheering all of them on as they're practicing their rate of shooting these cannons. And I don't know if you call it reloading, if it's cannons, maybe, I'm not sure. But just seeing how, you know, when they first start, I think it's 2 minutes and 10 seconds or something. And then at the end of the day, it's like 1 minute and 34 seconds. And, you know, it's just the way that he inspires, I don't know. He just inspires hard work and loyalty but also like just joy, because the fact that when they all finish, he's like, extra rations of, you know, of rum or whatever it is for everybody, and everyone's like absolutely thrilled. And I don't know, I just think that that sequence of him just working with his men to perfect what they're doing just has this sense of like buildup of like, oh man, they're getting better, like this is really gonna be, you know, a battle the next time they run into the Phantom. Like, wow, let's go. And I don't know, it just kind of amps me up a little bit, and I think it's supposed to, like, he's amping up his men, like that's the point. But yeah, I really like that sequence a lot.
Yeah, I agreed. It's great. I don't know how he does it, but the way he's able to inspire these men, and men who, like, you know, a lot of the officers, they're coming from more privileged classes and they've chosen their life, but a lot of these sailors might be men who were impressed into this life, and so they did not choose it. They were basically kidnapped, or men who were maybe prisoners, or men who did this because they have no other recourse. This is the only career that they could find. Like, there are a lot of reasons for, you know, this is a very difficult life to have and career to have. There's a lot of risk, very little reward, but he manages to bring them together and to inspire them to do their best and to care for one another in a way that is very impressive, and that is a leadership skill that some people have, and it's very rare, but whenever you do find it, it's always very valuable and beautiful.
Yeah, I would follow Captain Jack anywhere.
All right, so next they are running into another challenge. So they're trying to pursue the Acheron, but they're in I think it's called a doldrum, maybe?
Oh,
but
yeah.
The idea is that there's no wind, there's no rain, they're just kind of stuck.
For like
in the
over
middle
a
of the ocean.
week, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fairly long period of time, and everyone is just kind of, they're just running through their daily routines, but they're bored and they're scared and they're
hot.
They're drinking a lot, which is never good. So Nagel, the friend of Worley, the guy who was thrown overboard, he has kind of put all of his grief about his friend's death onto Hallam, the officer who was trying to help him but froze. And Hallam, we've seen throughout this movie, is just kind of, he's just kind of awkward. He doesn't really know how to relate to the men. They kind of distrust him. They don't like him. There's a weird part earlier where they're all singing and then Hallam joins in and they all drop out and kind of stare at him.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
It's kind of weird because he actually has a really beautiful voice. But yeah, they just really dislike him and he just does not know how to fix that. And so Nagel consciously disrespects Hallam. He like knocks into him and Hallam doesn't do anything. So Jack sees it and he orders Nagel locked up and flogged, which is, you know, the proper
take that man
military.
below, clap him in irons.
Yeah, it's the correct military discipline for this sort of offense. But Hallam is just like, Aubrey takes him aside and is really trying to explain to him how this works. Like, you need to be firm. Like, don't be a tyrant, but you need to exact discipline and you need to preserve the hierarchy. You can't be trying to be friends with these people because they're under your authority and they're not going to respect you if you're too chummy with them. You need to actually, you know, lay down the law when you need to. And Hallam's like, yeah, I'm going to try. But it's like, he's 30 years old and he's still a midshipman. He seems like a good person and he seems to know the things he's supposed to know. He just does not have the personality for this kind of life. And we don't know why he's in this.
Jack tells him too. He's like, you're an intelligent man. You know how everything works. You've made the right calls. You're good at what you do. It's just, you don't know how to be in a position of authority. And I think that that's really important that Jack points that out. Like, this man is not an idiot. Like, he's very smart. He's very good at what he does. And I think we see in the beginning that he makes the right call in terms of, you know, having everybody get ready for battle. But Jack really, again, because I think he really cares, like, he brings up to him, he's like, I don't know whatever the test is because I'm not familiar, but he basically says, you know, you had the opportunity to take this test twice to move up in rank and you failed both times. You're still a midshipman. Like, what's going on here, you know? And it's just very clear that Hallam doesn't have the
leadership capabilities,
just like the qualities that are needed in order for him to be in the roles that he supposedly is supposed to be in. And so it's really sad kind of what happens to him, but you know, I just feel like he needs to be on dry land. He needs to be like a carpenter or something, or a woodworker. I don't know.
Yeah. We never find out why it is he's at sea, whether there's some, you know, it's family pressure or financial necessity or what it is, but he's just not cut out for this position. And it's just very tragic that, you know, he finds himself in this role that he does not have the personality or the skills to execute. There's a great scene where Stephen and Jack are kind of having a discussion about this whole situation because, you know, Jack, very understandably, as the captain, he understands the importance of hierarchy and discipline in this very, you know, close-knit, regimented atmosphere. He's like, this whole thing does not work unless we allow the men to have their little pleasures. You know, they need their grog, but they also need to understand the discipline. They need to understand that there's a ranking system here, and we can't allow them to get out of line because it's really important that we preserve, you know, the system in this way. And then Stephen's coming at it from a very different angle because he's, you know, he's not of that military mindset. He's all about he's the idealist, he's the scientist, he's all about the sort of enlightenment, like all men are equal, individuality is important. And so, yeah, it's just a really interesting little discussion that they have. Jack has this moment where he says, men must be governed. And Stephen's like, that's the philosophy of tyrants or
of every tyrant in history. Yeah. And Jack also says something to Stephen where he says to him, like, you've come to this is not the place for anarchy or something like that. And he's really putting his foot down. And I think that this is maybe the one time in this movie where we see him really behaving in a way that's like, whoa, all right, like you gotta chill out a little bit. I mean, I see where Jack's coming from. Honestly, I kind of agree with him. But he gets pretty heated. And I don't think we've mentioned that the thing that they're arguing over is the fact that Jack has recognized that he has to flog, I don't remember his name.
Nagel.
Yeah, he has to flog Nagel for how he treated Hollum, who's his ranking superior officer. And, you know, Stephen's just like, dude, these men are hot. They're bored. They've been sitting around like we're all going crazy. You know, it's just insubordination and we have to have mercy or whatever. And, you know, Jack is saying, no, you know, we have to maintain order. And, again, I think that ultimately Jack does make the right decision, but unfortunately it kind of is almost counterintuitive because then it creates more of an issue towards Hollum that causes him to, you know, ultimately end his life. But, yeah, anyway, I just think it's another example of Jack having to make difficult decisions that then could potentially lead him to a place of like, you know, regretting maybe his decisions. I'm not saying that's where he's at, but I feel like in the future he could look back on this and be like, oh my gosh, look at all these decisions that I've made and how they affected people. Like, he just has a huge responsibility, and the decisions that he makes affect everyone because this is one ship where everyone is so close together, and it's like there's no getting away from or avoiding the decisions that you're making. And you also automatically see the results of the decisions that you've made because you have nowhere else to go.
Well, I think it's a great case where they're both right to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
Where Jack is absolutely correct about the way, you know, he is so experienced in the ways that ships work and the ways that you need to respond to certain situations in order to prevent them from getting out of control and what the men need in order to keep them going. And I think he's right ultimately in what he decides, even though it does have this unintentional consequence that maybe if he had recognized that Hollum was struggling earlier, he could have worked to prevent this thing from happening. But I think there's also a sense in which Stephen is also right in a larger sense, where even though he is, and I think this is kind of typical of Stephen's character, Jack is very pragmatic about the situation that's right in front of them. Stephen is more of an idealist, and he's more looking at the larger picture. And so when it comes to something like stopping at the Galapagos Islands, Jack is correct that, like, we're here on a mission. I can't stop for your hobbies. Like, we have to go. But at the same time, there is a legit point that Steve is making is, like, there's a larger picture here. The idea of advancing natural science is a really important one for humanity in general. And
I actually, that argument that Steven makes, it doesn't annoy me, but I'm like, dude, you're on a warship. Like, if you want to be a scientist and go, like, there's probably other ships where that's the purpose of what they're doing. You need to recognize what you signed up for. Like, I see the point that he's making in terms of, like, you're looking at the immediate reward and I'm looking at, like, the bigger picture, and this could ultimately help us a lot down the road. And I'm like, you're right. But also, you're not on the right ship to be making that argument. Like, yeah. if you were on a scientist ship and they were making the argument that we need to go, and then like, you're making a good point.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is a case where the sort of bigger picture or longer term view is not necessarily actually the right one. I think Jack's view is the right one, but I think Stephen offers this alternate perspective that is kind of looking at it from a larger point of view that has something really valuable to offer, even if it's not necessarily what you need in the immediate context.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, like, I see the point that he's making, and it's a good point. I'm just like, dude, and this is
now's not the time.
Like, this is not me talking about the movie from the outside. This is like me as a person on the ship in this period of time with these men. It's like, dude, you're on the wrong ship. Like, this is, if that's what you want to be doing, then you need to go do that, because here on this ship, it is a hobby, what you're talking about. And if you want people to value that thing, then go be with people who value that thing. Like, we don't have time for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, all that is to say is, so Nagel is indeed flogged. And Hallam, there's this kind of weird decision that Hallam makes where he hears the men whispering, and he goes below deck, and all the men they stop talking and they just stare at him and kind of, like, intimidatingly move up close to him, and he's, like, wandering through the deck and is just clearly terrified and has no idea what to do. And he has a complete panic attack, breakdown. He goes to the doctor, and he's like, I've been cursed, basically. And this whole time the sailors have been talking about the idea of a Jonah, which is this idea that there is a person on the ship who is divinely cursed, and the only way that the ship is going to get good luck again is if we eradicate that person, basically.
Feed them to the whale.
Mm-hmm. So Hallam takes that into himself, and so that night when he's on watch, he, with Blakeney, poor Blakeney has to witness this.
You've always been very kind to me.
I know, it's so sad. So Hallam grabs a cannonball and jumps off the side of the ship, and he dies. And the next day, Jack gives a memorial speech, and he just basically says, like, we have kind of, anyone here who has spoken ill of Hallam or has failed him in some way is guilty. Like, he's sort of gently shaming the men, and I feel like from the looks on their faces, they kind of feel like, oh, we may have gone too far.
I also love, though, because I feel like this is part of the culture of being, a shipman during these times when people are stuck on ships for long periods of time. I think it's kind of known that a lot of these men started having, like, tall tale stories or whatever it is, and they would have these superstitions and these things that they would start to believe, because when you're stuck alone with the same people out at sea, like, and I think it's known that people would start to come up with these sorts of things. And I find
you're trying to create patterns and make meaning out of everything that you can.
Yeah. And so I find it interesting that I feel like in this sequence, we also see that Jack, even though he's being the captain and taking the role that he needs to, of kind of, like you said, gently reprimanding the men for what they've done in a way that's a little bit, not super, like, directly doing it. But then the end of this sequence, the wind returns and Jack goes, God be praised. And I think that I think it's interesting to see that Jack, yes, he's being the captain, but also like he kind of believes these things too, you know, like he's been at sea for a long time. He's seen these things happen, and he kind of has some sort of belief system as well of like, yeah, there are maybe like spirits or a god who does need to be appeased and whatever, like curses are real. And I just find it really interesting, that little added aspect of like, yes, he's a captain, but also he is a man stuck at sea who can get involved in these things and believe these things. And I also think that this movie begs the question of like, were they right? You know, was Hallam cursed? And did they actually appease God? And that's why the wind returned? Like, I don't know. But I think the movie begs that question, you know?
Yeah, definitely. There's that moment where after Hallam has gone to Stephen and said that he's cursed, Stephen's telling this to Jack, and Jack is like, the men they can never abide a Jonah. And Stephen's like, you don't believe this, do you? And Jack doesn't respond, or he doesn't say no.
He doesn't not say.
He doesn't not, yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. There is that interesting level of opening it up to interpretation of the fact that the wind returns at that very moment. And it's set up because the night before, Blakeney mentions that Jack is pretty sure the wind is going to return that day, just from his sort of, long-standing sailor's instinct. But the fact that it returns at that moment, it does open that question of, is it because Hallam killed himself? Is it because Jack has brought up the ill treatment that he received, and now that has been brought into the open, there's some sort of appeasement that has been happening? And like, as you say, this movie really does help you to understand, and I think, have a level of respect for the fact that when you are a sailor in the middle of the ocean and you are so much at the mercy of these gigantic forces that are completely beyond your understanding, you can't predict the weather, you're completely at the mercy of the things that you find out there. It gives you a level of humility and feeling like, well, as human beings, we can't control everything. We don't know everything. And so we do need, or at least, want to reach out to something that is larger than us, that can give us a level of protection or a level of understanding.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
So the next thing that happens, actually, speaking of superstitions, there's this albatross that is circling the ship. And the albatross is this very metaphorical figure in sailing. There's a poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge called The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which basically goes off the idea that the albatross is considered good luck, and a sailor shoots an albatross in the poem, and he therefore dooms the ship to bad luck, and so his fellow sailors therefore force him to wear the albatross around his neck, as this constant reminder of the guilt of what he has done. But anyway, in the movie, so there's this albatross which is a bird that's circling the ship, and Stephen's like really excited about it, but then a soldier is trying to shoot it for some reason, and he accidentally shoots Stephen. So Stephen is wounded, which is very bad.
Isn't it like one of the captains who shoots him, that one guy with the white hair who literally says multiple times in this movie, we could catch up to her, but to take her would be madness. Like, he says it so many times.
Very intense. If I remember right, it's the guy who's always wearing a red uniform, which makes me think he might be a Royal Marine as opposed to a naval officer.
Gotcha.
But I'm not trained enough in the distinctions of different uniforms to know for sure.
Gotcha.
Anyway, he's a guy who has a gun, who's on board, and apparently is kind of an idiot. Yeah. So yeah, Stephen is shot. His mate, the doctor's mate, he doesn't really have the training or the confidence to actually perform the operation and remove the bullet. And Jack makes the decision to give up on chasing the Acheron, and he returns to the Galapagos so they can actually move Stephen on shore and perform the surgery. And basically he chooses his friendship with Stephen over finally catching the Acheron. And Stephen, like a complete badass, performs the surgery on himself using a mirror.
Because the other doctor, he has to read up on some books.
He's just paging through an introductory.
And Jack is like, read up on some books? Like, what?
What are you talking about? And you see him just paging through, here, what the muscles look like.
And almost
he's just
vomiting,
he looks so
just by looking
lost.
At the pictures.
Yeah. So I think Stephen kind of realizes, I think I need to get take this in charge if I want myself to live.
Yep.
But yeah, he performs the surgery. It's a success. He manages to heal, and they all hang out at the Galapagos for a little while. Stephen and Blakeney and this third guy, I think Padine is his name.
The cook, who has so much sass whenever he serves them food.
So much sass. I didn't realize that was the cook. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're like going all over the island and they're collecting samples, and Stephen's just in the seventh heaven. But there's this really great moment where Stephen thanks Jack for, taking him to shore and saving his life and taking him back, allowing him to be on the Galapagos. And Jack says, "You can thank me by naming a bush after me, something prickly and hard to eradicate."
Yeah.
Which is very, very cute. But yeah, so they're going all over the island. They're collecting their little naturalist samples. But then on the other side of the island, they discover the Acheron is actually sailing back into bay. So it's right on the other side of the island. So they drop all their samples and they run back to the ship. Any thoughts on this section?
No, I mean, aside from the fact that I think it just further establishes how cool Stephen is. I mean, the fact that he's like, "Yep, you got to break my rib. Yep, I gotta," it's so good. And the fact that Jack is standing there like, "I'm a captain. I've seen lots of wounds my whole life." And he's like, ugh.
He's really struggling during that surgery.
Yeah, I love seeing the friendship between Jack and Stephen. I feel like this is kind of the culmination of their friendship, this whole sequence, where we really see how much Jack cares for Stephen. And he does it in such a grand gesture. So yeah, I mean, I like it for that reason. We haven't entirely gotten to this yet. I'm assuming you would have mentioned it anyway, but I think it's really cool how we see this strategy that ultimately leads to these men being able to conquer the Phantom comes from the science that Stephen has been doing on the Galapagos. I just think that's a really cool connection, but yeah.
The way that they balance each other out, and they, like, as we said before, they respect each other and they really listen to each other and they're able to learn from each other it's really beautiful.
Yeah, and the music during that whole scene on the Galapagos is great. It's just a bunch of like string pieces. I don't know who the composer is, but it's really great.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, the music throughout this whole movie is just really, really great. So yeah, I wanted to kind of like talk about this whole section together because it's just one big action set piece. But basically, so now that they know where the Acheron is, they're headed around to go and catch up with it. And while they're on their way, Stephen Blakeney are kind of sharing their findings with Jack, and they mention this stick bug, which disguises itself to confuse its predators, and Jack's like, ding, 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 a little light bulb goes off. So he orders the Surprise to be repainted so that it looks like a whaling ship, and everyone like puts on like big overcoats over their uniforms so they look like whalers, and Jack's like, "All right, everybody, stop referring to me as sir," and they're all like, "Yes, sir," and he's like, "We're gonna work on that."
Yep.
Which is funny. Jack also assigns, which is very cute, he assigns Calamy this really important job, who's the like teenage officer, this really important job once they have caught up with the Acheron and have boarded her, of going downstairs and freeing prisoners. And Blakeney learns that he's not going to be in the landing party and is really sad, but then Jack is like, "That's because you're going to be in charge of the ship once I've gone on the landing party." So
cool. I love how he says, there's 2 times in this movie where Jack does that, and both times they're awesome. This is the first time where he's like, "Yeah, when we get over to the other side, you're going to command the ship." And then the next time is after they conquer the Phantom, and he tells Pullings like, "Yeah, so you're going to be the one taking the ship and doing the thing, Captain Pullings." And Pullings like, "What? Cool. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir."
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned this before, but I just wanted to emphasize how much I love the recurring theme throughout this movie of Jack really taking the time to mentor and encourage and give responsibilities and feedback to his underlings. Like, he's not all about making myself look cool. He's all about, let me bring up the younger generation and share my knowledge with them so that they can, hopefully achieve to the best of their ability, the things that I've achieved. And it's such a great quality. It's such a great character beat every time it happens. seeing the way that all of these things have come together, like all the different things that he's taught Calamy and Blakeney over the course of the movie, now culminating in them having these really pivotal roles to play in this battle, is just so satisfying. And yeah, I love it so much.
I mean, you can tell that he's been there. Like he knows, he understands what it means as that sort of, you know, person of that rank to be told by this person who is him that he's moving to another rank. Like he knows that experience, and he knows how much that means. And I think he does it in ways that he knows is going to make them feel the most excited about it, you know? And I also love, we actually didn't talk about this, but earlier on when I think it's that scene when Jack makes the really not that funny lesser of two evils joke, when we see, I think it's Calamy who wants to hear about stories about this like legendary captain that Jack served under at one time.
Lord Nelson.
Yeah. And everyone at the table, or I guess they start with kind of cracking jokes about him because, you know, Jack has two stories about him. The first one is they ate dinner and, you know, the captain asked him like, Aubrey, can you pass the salt? You know?
And that was it.
And of course they all think it's super funny because they're all super drunk. And then he recognizes that Calamy is like upset that this is the story that he told because he has such a high reverence for this person who's almost like a celebrity to him. And Jack clocks it. And he's like, okay, this really means something to this kid. So I need to like tell him something that's really going to like inspire him and help him really see this person that he reveres so much as a real man and you know, whatever. And I just think it's really cool how Jack does that. You know, he really just, again, like I said before, I feel a strong sense that he remembers what it was like to be these men at each individual stage. And he steps back into their shoes and he's like, how can I inspire them where they're at? You know, and I mean, that's freaking good leadership, right? Like people who get to a point of power but recognize all they had to go through to get there and where they've been, and not just getting so like power hungry but it's like, no, they remember and they have humility of where they came from. Yeah he's a good captain.
Yeah, I am so glad that you brought that up because I actually really wanted to talk about it, and then I somehow completely skipped over it when I was summarizing that part. But yeah, I love that scene. And I love the fact that the story that he tells about meeting Lord Nelson too is like, it's something about how Lord Nelson, like, he refused to wear a coat because he said his zeal for king and country kept him warm. Mm-hmm. And Stephen is kind of like rolling his eyes. He's like, yeah, sure, okay. But Jack has this great moment where he's like, yeah, no, I understand that that's cheesy, but somehow coming from that man, like having known this man and spent time in the same room with him, I completely believed it. And there's just this shot of Calamy, and you can just see him. Like, the kid does such a, whatever the name of the actor who plays this kid is, he does such a good job, or he's just glowing, you know? And it's this sense of, like, this person who he admires, you know, this sort of, you know, this far-off figure of Lord Nelson is just, he just has so much admiration and reverence to him. You know, he's such a hero to him. And Jack himself is, you know, kind of also occupying that place for him. And it's just, you know, heroes have a really important place in our lives in kind of inspiring us to be better and inspiring us toward greater things. And I don't think, you know, obviously that can very easily tip over into an idol worship that, you know, refuses to accept the fact that our heroes are also flawed human beings and that they have their darker sides. You know, it's not good to dismiss everything that is bad about a person and ignore that and just focus on the good. But I think there is a really important place that our heroes and our mentors and the people that we look up to can serve in inspiring us to do better. And it's Nelson did that for Jack, and now Jack is doing that for Calamy. And it is this really, really sweet cycle that is this kind of running theme throughout this movie.
Good leaders inspire good leaders.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of good leadership, the crew of the Surprise, they've disguised the ship as a whaling ship. Aubrey gives this really inspiring speech where he basically lays out the entire plan, who's going to be where, what they're going to do step by step. And then he ends and he says, England is under threat of invasion, and though we be on the far side of the world, this ship is our home, this ship is England. And it's just, again, that's really the right thing to say at the right time of kind of bringing everyone together and reminding them of what they are fighting for in this particular context that they are finding themselves in, and giving them something to hold on to in terms of motivating them to keep going.
I think a lot of people, it seems based off of the little bit of internet and Letterboxd, searching I did after watching this movie, a lot of people seem to really connect with that line of "this ship is home, this ship is England." I think it's a good line, but for me, it's not like, whoa, this is the line of the movie. But so many people like, this is the line of the movie. I'm like, okay, maybe it's because I don't have any like strong feelings towards the country of England, but
that's interesting. I didn't realize that would be the line.
I'm just not really a patriotic person either. Like, I'm not really like, this ship is home, this ship is America. It's like,
well, I think it's that idea that this is a line that you could universalize. This is a line where you could replace it. This ship is our home. You could say this ship is America, but you could also say, like, this ship is my family. This ship is my community. This ship is the people that I care about, the home that I love, that I want to protect.
Yeah. If I think about it in that way, it makes sense. Like, if I were on a ship and we said, this ship is home, this ship is Chicago, like yeah, I guess I get it in that way. Chicago feels more like home to me than America, even though Chicago's in America, but whatever.
Yeah. It's the feelings, the mindset, the love that you feel for the place that you're from. That is the important thing there.
Yeah.
All right. So so battle ensues. So as planned, the Acheron try and take over this quote-unquote whaling ship, but surprise, it's not a whaling ship. Aubrey gives the word, they roll out the cannons, all the soldiers jump up, and there's just this huge battle that ensues. They're firing on each other. They manage to take down the Acheron's main mast. Aubrey and Pullings lead a couple of landing parties over to the other side. Stephen is sword fighting, which who knew that he could sword fight? He does a great job. Calamy does his job. He frees the prisoners who are below deck. Blakeney is leading people on the surprise, and yeah, they win. The crew of the Acheron surrender.
I just want to note that their training paid off. That sequence where they were kind of timing themselves to shoot cannons faster paid off here, because they had a limited amount of time and they all aimed at the mast and they all shot their cannons super quickly. And that was basically it. I mean, after you do that, it's like, okay, I mean, we have to sword fight, but the main job is done, And also, we didn't mention either that like the French have their own type of disguise where they all get onto the ship and all of the French people are playing dead on the ground. And
That's right, yeah.
And then they hop up and they're like, oh wait, no, we're still alive and we're gonna fight you now. But yeah, I remember I thought that was interesting the first time I watched this movie, because again, like, this movie shows so many different fighting tactics for people that we're working in this type of ship environment. It's like, wow, you can make decoy structures and put lanterns on them, and you can shoot at masts, and you can pretend and disguise yourself as something else. You can play dead. It's like, you could do anything, And I just thought it was cool how they kind of employed all these different tactics throughout the movie. So.
Well, and I find it so funny that
and you can fake being a doctor.
Yes.
It's like there's so many things that they do here.
Yeah, and like the main villain of the movie, the captain of this French ship, I find it so fascinating that you don't meet him until the very end, and even at that moment, you don't actually know that he's the captain. So you basically never meet him in his capacity as captain, and yet you do have this really strong sense of who he is in the fact that he is so well matched with Aubrey. He's also very resourceful. He's full of tricks. He's full of wisdom about when to attack and when not to, when to withdraw. And it just makes me all the more sad that we never got a sequel where they finally get to meet face to face. Not yet. I would love to see 2023.
Something
Russell
tells
Crowe.
me this will get revived. This will get revived in like 15 years, and I think it'll happen.
There's going to be some sort of like I don't know, Amazon Prime reboot with the younger cast doing the novels, and it probably won't be very good.
Because if there's one thing that Amazon's great at, it's rebooting successful content.
What are you talking about? Nothing but success. Anyway. Yeah, so yeah, all that is to say is they win, but they can't find the captain, and Aubrey comes upon the ship's doctor, who is apparently has been operating on the captain, but the captain's just died, and he gives up the sword, and so everything's all sorted out. All the crew of the Acheron are in prison, and they're being sent off to, I think it's like a port in Chile, and he promotes Pullings. He promotes Pullings to captain the Acheron there, and it's such a sweet moment. Pullings is I was a little like, who did he think was going to captain the ship? Maybe he just wasn't expecting the promotion, but he's so excited and so happy. And Pullings he's been there at Jack's side the entire time, and you can see that he's competent. Like
totally.
The two of them clearly have a long history, and he has learned from the best, and he's really good. But this is the first time he's had a chance to be on his own and prove himself, and he's just so excited, and everyone's so happy for him, and it's very sweet. And also, this movie's really reactivating my James Darcy crush, which is a long-standing crush of mine. So it's just a personal note.
Oh, that's really funny.
Anyway.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Something that came to my mind, it's really dumb, but I'm going to say it anyway. There are a few shows, Brooklyn Nine-Nine being one of them, where there is this clip from a production company at the end where I don't remember who says it, but someone goes, "Not a doctor, shh." I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but if there's
have zero idea what you're talking about.
If there's anyone listening to this that has watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you know what I'm talking about. But for some reason that just came into my head right now, because the doctor of the Phantom is not actually the doctor.
Not a doctor.
And not a doctor. Shh. But anyway,
That's hilarious.
Like I said, it was incredibly dumb, but it came to my mind. So there you go.
There you go. All right. Oh, one thing that I didn't mention here that we should mention is that Calamy unfortunately is killed in this battle, and as is Nagel. But Blakeney sews up Calamy's canvas, and
Mr. Allen too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
the guy who's "if we can take her."
Yeah.
That guy dies.
Yeah, I think he's the one who usually starts the singing when they're singing.
Oh, did you mention that Jack says that their ship, they're going to go back to the Galapagos? Did I miss that?
Oh, that's right. No, I hadn't mentioned that. Yeah. So the plan is that Pullings is going to sail the Acheron back to this port, and then Jack and the Surprise are going to chill in the Galapagos for a few more days and give Stephen a chance to hang out there some more, recollect his samples.
Find his bird,
yes. But it turns out, as they're playing music that evening, Jack puts it together that the doctor who of the Acheron had actually died, which means that the captain was actually the doctor that he met. So the captain is still alive, still out there, still dangerous. So he decides, nope, re-diverting. We're going to follow after the Acheron and figure all that out. Steven's like,
of course.
Again?
Like I said, Stephen, go join a scientist ship. But also don't do that, because we need your expertise as a doctor. Yes.
We need you in the same room as Jack. But yeah, so the movie ends kind of on an open note. You know, they're following after. We trust that they're going to sort it out, but still some unfinished business there, and they're just playing music together as they sail off.
It's a beautiful song. It's a absolutely beautiful song.
It's gorgeous. It's very jaunty. It's kind of different from what they've played before, but all the music in this movie is so beautiful. Good. Yeah, so that's the end. All our friends sail off into the distance for more adventures.
They live happily ever after.
They lived happily ever after. Yeah. So are there any other points that you wanted to discuss about this movie overall, or any moments that we kind of skipped over?
I don't think so. I think we pretty much touched on everything. There's just one final thing that kind of occurred to me before to bring up. It's like a little thing, but it's another aspect of Jack that I was like, there's just certain things that you say that are really cool. They shouldn't be cool, but they are. But it's the sequence when they like put out the decoy thing, and then the Phantom kind of follows it and is shooting at it. And then, you know, the surprise is like, okay, we're going to go in this other direction and get away from them. And then after, you know, X amount of time, Jack looks at, I'm sorry, I'm going to call him Pippin. Jack looks at Pippin and he's like, that's enough westing. That's enough easting. Let's go southwest. And we're like, oh yeah, let's go south. And then,
oh crap.
And then Pippin's like, aye, sir, southwest. I'm like, yes, let's do it. This is awesome. Again, shouldn't be cool. Just someone saying stop going east and start going southwest. But it's super
just
cool.
The way he delivers it. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. I didn't give any appreciation for so when they're going around the Cape and they're like, they have to go even further south, so like almost to Antarctica, and it's like snowy and, you know, miserable. And then they're finally going to turn north again, and they celebrate with this little cake that they created that looks like the Galapagos Island, and they're all very tipsy, but Jack is so delighted about this cake.
He is so drunk. Oh my gosh. When he takes a little ship and just like shoves it.
He just like shoves it in his mouth. And he's like slicing up the islands, like, here, you take this rock and you take that cape. And Steve is just like, what is happening?
It looks so gross. It's like,
yeah.
Ugh. But
it's just like this weird chocolate mousse that, yeah.
It looks nasty.
Yeah, you know, you got to find your fun somewhere.
So can I make my case now for this being a sports movie?
Oh, please.
Okay. So like I said before, they've added on a couple other things that kind of break out of the, you know, typical sports movie mold. But, and I'm also speaking about sports movies that are specifically men's sports, because unfortunately most sports movies highlight men's sports and not women's sports. But so first of all, we've got a group of men that are kind of assembled onto a team with a common goal. If they weren't on this team, they otherwise probably wouldn't interact much. But because they have this thing in common and they're working towards a goal, they all have to learn how to like band together to win what they want to win. And it's us versus them. It's our team versus their team. And sometimes sports, they are fighting for things that are more noble, like not, you know, as opposed to just competition. But like we see that with sometimes in the Olympics, and we're fighting against Germany or whatever it might be. Like sometimes it is fighting for things that are more symbolic of like us versus them in a way that's more personable, as opposed to just like, oh, it's my team and I want my team to win, even though that's valid. It's incredibly valid. But so it has a dynamic of like good versus evil, us versus them. We're going to fight them. We're going to beat them. We're all on a team for this common purpose. We have a great coach who like brings us all together. And like sometimes certain people get cut from the team and it's really hard, but the coach has to do it because they know.
Cut from the team with quotation marks. I love it.
Yeah. But like they have to be cut from the team because like it's not for the greater good, and like it's really hard because we want them to be there, but we know like either all of our spots are full and we don't have enough space left, or whatever it might be, or you're injured and you can't play anymore. Like there's always people that are on the team, but for whatever reason they can't continue, whether that means they're cut or they get injured or whatever. And it's always an emotional beat of like, this person has invested all the time, they formed this camaraderie with their teammates, but now they can no longer continue for whatever reason. We have the quintessential rallying speech at the end where the coach is like, hey guys, so I know that we've been preparing for this for a long time. We know that we're up against a big competition, but you know what? We're going to take them and we're going to win. And you know why? Because this, and this, and we're going to win for blah. And everyone goes, wow, yeah, we're going to go out, we're going to play, and we're going to win now. Like this whole rallying speech that gets everyone super hyped to then go play the game. And then of course the team wins and hooray and whatever. It's just, like I said, there's added things like scientists. We also have the common thing of like, there's a coach and there's an assistant coach that disagrees with the decisions that the coach is making, and it creates conflict. Sports teams have this dynamic of ranking. It's like we have the coach, we have the assistant coaches, we have the captain, we have the assistant captains, we have the players. And for me, even thinking about hockey, it's like everyone has their own position. There's the center, there's the right wing, there's the left wing, there's the right defense, the left defense, there's the goalie. This is how you behave when you're one man down and you're penalty killing versus when you're power playing and you have the upper hand, and like different strategies. And this movie is a sports movie. I'm sorry. It just is. Like, and the reason I say that is because I know that this movie connects with you a lot. And I'm just trying to show that like a lot of these themes here that connect you to this movie also exist in sports films. And so the way that you feel about this movie is similar to how people who like sports movies feel when they watch sports movies. Obviously, this movie is not directly a sports film. There's other added things, but like a lot of themes are there that are very similar. And I would say that there are more themes present that are similar than not. So anyway, that's my case.
First of all, I love that you've made that case. I love that for you. Second of all, I feel like you could make that same argument about 75% of war films and just say every war film is a sports film, which to me is the other way around. You should say every sports film is a war film.
Interesting. I'll have to think about that. I wouldn't say every sports film is a war film, but yeah, that's really interesting.
Also a good number of Westerns. Just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I'm just trying to help you like sports movies.
I want to try and help you like Westerns.
This is the lens in which I watch movies now. How can I get Geneva to like sports movies? That's how I watch everything now. Is there some way I can manipulate this to convince Geneva?
Can you make this movie not about a no, just kidding.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Well, I love it. I will chew on that. All right. Well, if there's nothing else that we wanted to talk about, we can move on to the critical response to this movie. So as I mentioned, unfortunately, this movie at the time was not really a financial success. I don't think it was really would necessarily be called a flop, but it was not the kind of hit that they would have wanted for the amount of budget that was put into it. There were some other huge movies that year that really overshadowed
Pirates of the Caribbean, The Return of the King, like...
That was the year of Finding Nemo, X2, Elf, or all that year. Like 2003 was a really big year for movies, and this movie just kind of got drowned out. But it was a critical hit, very much so. Rotten Tomatoes currently has it...
As it should have been.
Agreed. Rotten Tomatoes currently has it at 85%. Metacritic has it at 81. I've pulled 2 critic reviews. So first, our good friend Roger Ebert. He gave this movie 4 stars, as well he should. And in part he wrote, Master and Commander is grand and glorious and touching in its attention to its characters. Like the work of David Lean, it achieves the epic without losing sight of the human, and to see it is to be reminded of the way great action movies can rouse and exhilarate us, can affirm life instead of simply dramatizing its destruction.
I love that last part. That's great.
I agreed. Yeah, I thought that was very insightful. And then secondly, I pulled a review from a woman named Stephanie Zacharek. I didn't note where this was from. I want to say it was Salon, but... Stephanie Zacharek, and she writes, as O'Brien wrote him and as Crowe plays him here, Jack Aubrey is a man who makes you understand some of the intricacies of heroism. Jack's heroism isn't just a crazy willingness to, say, run an adversary through with a sword. As Crowe plays him, he makes you understand that bravery is only the half of it, or maybe even less. The better part of Jack's talent may lie in inspiring so much confidence in his men. Heroes are almost impossible to play, partly because heroism, so affecting in real life, always manages to seem both tinny and overblown by the time it's poured onto a movie screen. But Crowe plays a character and not an ideal. Crowe's version of heroism is affable and human, never hokey or forced.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I like that. I think she just, kind of continuing similar themes that we were discussing about this character, and I think Russell Crowe really does an incredible job of bringing him to life.
So that review actually reminded me of something that I just wanted to bring up real quick.
Oh, please.
So Russell Crowe was one of the first actors that I genuinely really followed, because when I was old enough to actually start like watching movies that weren't kids movies, he was at like his peak. And so I just want to say from 2000 to 2007, he was in Gladiator, A Beautiful Mind, Master and Commander, Cinderella Man, American Gangster, and 3:10 to Yuma. And that is an incredible 7 years. Like, the fact that he was so strong for so long. And I know certain people, they have conflicting feelings about Beautiful Mind, Gladiator, whatever. That might be true. But there is no denying, in my opinion, that his performances in those movies are absolutely great. And I just think it's, man, he was at such a high. And in my opinion, ever since that time, he's never really made a movie that I've enjoyed. Nice Guys was fine, but he's never reached that peak again. And again, we don't need to go super into this because it's a tangent and we need to end the episode. But I was just thinking that, like, I don't know. It really is fascinating to me how you can be a super, super famous actor for a certain amount of time and then not really be relevant anymore. And it's so crazy how that happens. And it's really an accomplishment when actors are able to sustain that for a really long time, because it's actually not that common. And I would love to have Russell Crowe have a comeback and, like, just start pumping out incredible performances and incredible movies. But I don't know if it's his fault, if it's his agent's fault. I don't know what's going on, but, like, he's had like 15 really bad years.
Well, and to be fair, to be clear, you know, he's been working. It's just that the quality of movies, by and large, is not what it was in those early years of the 2000s. He's been around, and I love The Nice Guys. I think he's terrific in that, and I really love that movie. But in the years, especially since, I mean, some things that I just don't recognize, so maybe they're good and I'm just not aware, but also some things I'm like, oh, you can do a lot better.
Yeah, I just think it's crazy how you can be an actor at one point where everyone's like, I'm going to go see that movie because so-and-so is in it. And then it gets to a point and it's like, he's in that? Like, you know,
well,
or like,
that's
just
the the fickle nature of Hollywood fame.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's really interesting how that can happen. And it's a real accomplishment when actors are able to sustain that for a long period of time. But he's probably living off that money for the rest of his life, though. Like,
well,
you know,
I mean, I was gonna say
he's acting for the love of it at this point. He doesn't need the money.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's having a great time with the things that he was doing. There's that picture of him in The Pope's Exorcist on that little moped going around. He just looked like he was having a blast. So, you know, if he's happy doing what he's doing, you know, no disrespect, but he is a great actor who's capable of really great performances. So it would be nice to get a few more of those. In terms of awards and legacy for Master and Commander, so this movie actually, it really got some love at the Oscars in terms of nominations. It was nominated for 10 Oscars. So Best Picture, Best Director.
Lost all of them to Return of the King.
Best Picture, Best Director, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Editing, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. Of those, it only won 2. Best Cinematography, which I well deserved in my opinion.
I agree.
And Best Sound Editing. But yes, apart from that, as you said, this was the year that Return of the King was sweeping kind of a cumulative, you know, awards for all 3 of the Lord of the Rings movies, and well deserved. You know, I don't begrudge it any of those wins, but you know, I'm very glad that Master Commander got as much recognition as it got. Even
I feel like 2003 was definitely a year where you could say it's an honor just to be nominated, because no one was going to win. I'm sorry. Like, so the fact that you were nominated basically was winning, you know? And yeah, so it's no shame on this movie at all. How can you win when you're going up against a perfect film, the most perfect film of all time and the best movie ever made? I mean, there's no chance. So yeah, I'm glad this movie was recognized in lots of ways. I think that's great.
All right, so final thoughts. Yeah, I'm really glad to have a chance to revisit this movie again, and I look forward to watching it many more times in the future. This really is a movie where the setting is so small and so contained, and yet because of that, I feel like it can say so much about the world at large and about human nature and about the way that systems of humanity and community operate. It's just something I love. I mean, it's something I love about Westerns. So a lot of what I love about this movie is something I also love in Westerns. But in this movie, it's just, I think it's very insightful about certain things. It has a lot to say about heroism, about leadership, about teaching and training and caring about others. And it's also just a really fun, well-paced, exciting action movie, as both of us have said. It's really, really well made. It puts you in that time and place. It has this really epic sweep that and this texture and feel of reality that you don't often get from big budget movies today. So I love revisiting this movie, and I'm so glad it exists. So, Tatum, what about you? Last thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said earlier, this is a movie where when I was younger, I watched this movie all the time. So I don't think that this rewatch has necessarily inspired me to go watch it a bunch because I've seen it so many times. But yeah, I think that's something that really stuck out to me this time because it's been a hot minute since I've watched it. It was really nice watching this movie in 2023 because I feel like I've gotten, as all of us have, we've been so drowned in movies that are all CGI that it really stuck out to me a lot more, the practical effects in this and how well done it is and how impressive it is that they pulled this off. And I wish that filmmakers would watch things like this and be like, oh yeah, we can still do this. Let's try it. And probably film studios too. It's probably more so the studios than the filmmakers, to be honest. I don't know. But I don't know. It was just a lot more, I don't know. I was just filled with a lot more awe watching it because just comparing it to the stuff that is made now, it's just a lot more impressive in my opinion. This is not me poo-pooing CGI. Like, it's hard work. It can be done really well and look phenomenal. And CGI has pushed us forward in certain ways in the art of cinema that would not have otherwise been possible. And I'm very grateful for that. But I also think sometimes CGI is employed way more than it needs to be. And it's nice to see a movie like this that really stands out and is really impressive in how it tackles these things. So yeah, it looks great. And also I felt this way about this movie for a long time, but the soundtrack is great. And I don't think my feelings about that will ever change. It's really fantastic. So yeah.
Great. Yeah. And yeah, thank you that's a good point about CGI, that it does have its value and its place and can be very effective and allow you to do things that you could not have done before. And it's amazing when it's well deployed, but especially I think in this sort of immediate, you look at the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels and the way that CGI is deployed there, and it's just kind of, we have the technology, but we haven't really figured out how to harness it, and so maybe we're doing it a little in ways that are not really helpful to the reality of this movie. But
we can even see that across the arc of the Middle-earth movies that we've seen. Yeah.
Going from the Lord of the Rings movies to the Hobbit movies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's a good point. And no disrespect to the artists who worked very hard on those. They do their best. Yeah. All right. Well, Tatum, do you want to tell the people what we're going to be talking about next episode?
Yeah. So speaking of movies that have really great music, next week we will be watching a film that I really love. I've actually only seen it recently. I watched it for the first time about 1.5 years ago. And it's such a fun, pleasant, beautiful, just magical watch. That's kind of the word I use to describe it. This movie is magical. And it just takes you somewhere else that's just beautiful. So we will be watching Begin Again from 2013, made by one of my favorite directors. So yeah, stick around for that. It's a really beautiful musical by my definition. I guess we'll find out next week if it's a musical by Geneva's definition. But
I'm excited to have that conversation because I do have very picky definitions of what a musical is or isn't.
Yeah. But anyway, that's what we're talking about next week.
Awesome. All right. Very excited about that. All right. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Until next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at yourpigpod@gmail.com. Our theme song was composed by Joel Rushton, and our podcast graphic was designed by Kara Shin. If you like this show and want to hear more, please rate and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We're excited to have you on this journey with us. Until next time.